All right, let's go to our one of our Saturday games, which is a marquee matchup. It's Michigan State playing Oregon, a couple of top 10 teams. Boy, if you like situational handicapping, you get the long road trip for the Spartans. If you like the matchup analysis, you get the power defense of the Spartans against the power offense of Oregon, running that no-huddle attack against a great defense. Michigan State last week had a laugher over Jacksonville State 45-7, although the quarterback, Connor, hurt his leg in the battle, though we hear that he's good for this week, but that's still something to keep an eye on for this week. And here you have a Michigan State team that actually had a better record a year ago than Oregon. They were 13-1. Here they are, almost a 2-touchdown dog on the road. This Michigan State team returns 8 on offense, 5 on defense. They had a balanced offense last year, over 211 yards passing and 173 rushing. Defense number 1 in the country. They gave up just 13.2 points per game. That was 3rd in the nation. Very good defensive ends in junior Shalik Calhoun. He had 8.5 sacks last year, and Marcus Ruth, who had 5 sacks. They did lose some key players on the defense, but overall it's still one of the top 10 defenses in the country, and they're going to get tested. So, Sean, can the Big Ten make a statement here and kind of show that defense is still king?
Well, you're right. It is a Saturday game. It goes, in fact, at 3:30 Pacific time. I guess that's around 6:30 Eastern time, so it's kind of an evening game. I've got Oregon as a 13-point favorite. No total yet. They'll have that probably later this afternoon or tomorrow. It opened 11.5, went to 13. I can see it going maybe to 13.5 minus $1.20, maybe even up to 14 if they want to risk the buyback in the middle. And you're right. Lots of offense and lots of defense on both of these teams. And haven't seen it total yet, but in 13 games last year, the average posted total for these Oregon games was 70. So it's going to be up there. And their average margin of victory at home in 7 games last year was by 32 points a game. But the average line was 33 points a game. They covered 4 of them. And they also covered their bowl game last year as a 15-point favorite, 30-7 versus Texas. You know, I always like to look at that kind of stuff. They bring back 9 on offense, which is almost the entire offense, including junior quarterback Mariota. I don't think he needs any ink from me. 31 touchdown passes last year with only 4 picks. And he ran for another 715 yards. And, Jeff, I think that was number 2 on that team, which is pretty strong. Those teams have some pretty good running backs. Last week, they dismantled South Dakota State as a home favorite of 52.5, 62-13, but they don't get the cover. No look ahead here. Oregon will host Wyoming next week. So no recent history here. In fact, the last time I think these two teams played was in 1999. This is an early game in the season, but it has national title implications. And head coach Mark, and I'm not sure I'm pronouncing his name right, Helfrich, is that his name? Helfrich? Yeah, he's in his second year. Inherited a great program. How about Michigan State coming off their best season ever in school history? 13-1 straight up, 8-4-1 against the number. They beat Stanford 24-20 in a bowl game as a 7.5-point dog, a real statement there. And in their last 10 games last year, they were 8-2 against the number. Mark D'Antoni in his 8th year as a head coach. He's been there a while. Michigan State coming off a 45-7 win and cover as a home favorite of 34.5 versus Jackson. Is it Jacksonville State or Jackson? Yeah, Jacksonville State.
Jacksonville State.
Is it Jacksonville State? Okay. I actually have a play on this game, and it's a concept that really I don't understand why no one's come up with it, because every time you look at a score, you see a straight-up margin and an ATS margin, but there's also another feature in that score which no one ever talks about, which is the total percentage of the points scored by one team against the total number of points scored in the whole game. So this year, as you know, I always do stuff in the current season. I don't have much to work with, so I went back 4 years, 2010, 11, 12, and 13. If you have a home favorite of 10 or more, all the way up to 27.5, so you have a lot of room to work here. And that home favorite of 10 or more scored at least 66% of the points that were scored in their last game versus an opponent who scored 75% of their points in their last game, which Michigan State did. That home favorite, how about 18-1 straight up, 15-4 against the number, and by 10 points a game. Now, anybody who knows me knows I do stuff in the current season, but I don't have much to work with. But I think something over the last 4 years that is steady as that. It's only come up 19 times. But that home favorite, 18-1, 15-4 against the number by a margin of 10 points a game, which includes the 4 losses. So I'm going to be on Oregon, but I got them at 12. The line is up to 13. I'll probably have to answer to 13.5 to some of my clients. But I think Oregon is a pretty good play here.
All right, so he's looking at the home team. Michigan State did all that last year without Duffy Daugherty. How did they do that, Sean?
Duffy Daugherty, my man. I mean, what, 1955, 6 through the 60s? I'm surprised you remember Duffy Daugherty.
Great defensive teams like this one. Jeff, this Oregon team, the numbers are absolutely sizzling from last year. They were 4th in the country in scoring, 45.5 points per game, 291.5 yards passing. That was 21st. Oh, and they can run the football too. 273.5 yards rushing. That was 9th in the nation. Amazing. No huddle attack. And people might not know it that their defense was actually pretty good last year, 13th in the country, and points allowed just 20.5. So, how do you see this no huddle attack and this star quarterback in this showdown, Jeff?
Well, it's hard to go against a team like this, especially at home. The only thing they did wrong Saturday was not covering the spread. They only won by 49, but that's why some of these stats are misleading. It's hard to if you look at the list now. Oregon is 0-1 against the spread, but they won by 49 points, so that doesn't matter sometimes. But they had accumulated 466 yards on Saturday just in the first half. Marcus Mariota, 14 of 20 with 3 TDs in limited time. Byron Marshall, 117 yards receiving, 43 yards rushing. Freshman running back Royce Freeman had 2 TDs, as if they need more. There was some concern about the defense because South Dakota averaged 4.4 yards per carry, 172 yards. But then again, a lot of that was against backups, and when the game was already out of reach. So
that's why they caught them. That's why they call them jackrabbits.
That's it. There's no other reason, I guess. Oregon returns 5 starters on defense. That was one concern, but with a school like this, they really don't. It's not really a huge problem when you're scoring 40, 50 points a game. Michigan, this is a tough trip for what Michigan State has to go across the country. They have some injuries. The guard, Travis Jackson, has a back injury. That's the most serious. They also have some other ones. They're probable or questionable. Quarterback Connor Cook has a knee injury, although he went back in and played after that injury. Wide receiver McGurk Kings has an ankle injury. Running back Jeremy Langford, a leg injury. But they did average 4.2 yards per carry. They held Jacksonville State to 0.9. Last year, the Spartans' offense really improved as the season went on. It started off pretty bad, but they got a lot better. This year, it should be even better. The defense lost 6 starters, but Michigan State, they have good recruits, and they have a great system there, so that won't be much of a factor. Not a big play for me, but it's just so hard to go against Oregon because, they can explode at any time, even though Michigan State is known for its defense lately. I'll take a slight lean toward Oregon this game, John.
Okay, well, the Jacksonville State, it costs too much to change the name anyway, so they're just going to keep the same nickname. I'm going to go against you guys. I'm going to side with the underdog here in a closer game, Michigan State Spartans. If you want to hang with a team like Oregon, which is so hard to do, you got to have one of two things. You got to have great defense, or you got to have balance on offense. And this Spartan team had both last year and has the same type of a team for this year. I like this quarterback for Michigan State, 22 touchdowns, 6 interceptions. He was only a sophomore last year. And the ground game was very good, over 173 yards per game. So they do have balance. They were number 1 in the nation in yards last year. Lost some key players, but still has a lot of key talent back. They're going to be a top 10 defense. Remember last year they were an underdog to Ohio State, won that game by 10 points. And then the one team that compares in style to Michigan State that's out in the Pac-10 would be Stanford. That's the matchup that I look at. Well, the last 2 years, Oregon has been an underdog, one time a big underdog to Stanford's been a big underdog to Oregon, and they won both games. Last year was 26-20. Stanford had the edge in yards, 377 to 312, so they really contained the Oregon offense. In fact, it was 274 to 62 yards rushing, so Oregon can be pushed around up front on as far as stopping the run. And then the time of possession was a whopping 43-17. There's no doubt in my mind Michigan State is going to try to do that again. And at the time, Oregon was number 2 in the nation. And you go back 2 years, very similar story. Oregon lost 17-14 in overtime to the Stanford team. They were a big favorite in the game. 411 to 405 with the yards, pretty even, and the yards rushing were about even. 200 for Stanford, 198 for Oregon. And again, the time of possession, 37-23 roughly in favor of Stanford. So I think I like defense and I like ground game, and I think they'll be able to use that defense to hang within the number. I won't call for the upset, but it could be a close one on Saturday. Small side with a dog.